Hi, I'm Brad from DigiTenna.
Hi, I'm Don from DigiTenna. This is going to be a fun session. This is a session where we have a race, and we actually have a series of races that we're going to do with, not only with having a DigiTenna, but with some competitive things to give you an idea how much time you save and what it can mean in terms of a job cost reduction and also a profit incentive. The DigiTenna is the only one that's going to be able to do some of the things we're going to do, and especially as we get into that amplified version. For the first time, you can order a DigiTenna with a high-performance amp that does a lot in order to change the viewing experience. We also only sell to distributors. We want the distributors and also our dealers to profit and grow. And if that happens, we all grow together. We want to make money on our product.
DigiTennas were designed with broadcast engineering input and precisely tuned for optimal digital performance and the ultimate in free HDTV reception. Our game-changing amplifier is high performance with a wide bandwidth and a gain of 20 dB with only 1 dB of noise and a constant gain over the entire UHF and VHF spectrum. For the highest signal to noise ratio, best reception in most channels received. DigiTenna reduces installation time and cost and eliminate extra fittings and parts. There is only one output connection to a home, making installation easy and quick. DigiTennas with embedded amplifiers are small, lightweight, and rugged for a safer installation. And USA made in an automated facility for precise, consistent performance. We also have a DigiTenna with embedded amplifier and an extra input for a 2 DigiTenna installation, eliminating the need for a rotor. Embedded DigiTenna with 2 inputs, the DTF AMP 20-2 plus a DTF for dual installation multi-directional viewing. Competitors have to add a remote amplifier and a rotor, where we do not.
Steve is in this corner over here, and over here is Brad. Okay, on the count of 3, what we're going to do is you're both going to race. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, go! you enjoyed the DigiTenna race, and just a couple comments that I'd like to make. First, we were talking about the embedded amplifier and what it does. It does some amazing things on installation, cost savings, safety, the whole bit. But for those of you that do need a remote amplifier, we do have a remote amplifier with either 1 or 2 inputs, depending upon whether you want to run a dual or whether you want to run a single unit. Now for the race. And keep in mind the race was something else to see, because even though we assembled it on a nice place in a platform without anybody on the roof. There was no wind, there was no gale, there was no snow or anything like that. And basically, we let one man do it with a competitive unit when you really have to have 2 install that unit. Because if you're on the roof, you can't be fumbling around the way you guys were, or in some cases, you had to help out. The DigiTenna really performed well, and that was plainly stated. Now, for the timing on it. The DigiTenna assembly time was 4 minutes and 41 seconds. If you use dual DigiTennas, that is, have one pointing one direction, one pointing the other direction, the total time to put it on a mast was 7 minutes and 24 seconds. How did our competitor do? He actually did very, very well. He got his assembled in 34 minutes, or roughly almost 5 times as long. But he couldn't do the dual, because the dual required a whole other assembly of another unit. If he were to do a dual, plus he's got to get it up there and get the 2 connected. Not a good thing. The other one was the rotor. If he uses a rotor, you get that big thing up there with the rotor turning around. You're going to have screws and bolts and nuts that are going to start grinding away. Before you know it, you're going to have rotation. You're going to have lost channels, all kinds of strange things.
Or worse, it crashes over on the roof.
Yes. So we really did show you, hopefully, the advantages of a DigiTenna as compared to competition. Now, Brad, there's some other points that I think are important. The competitive unit that we saw had how many connection points?
Had 32 connection points.
And what does that mean in terms of the viewing experience for somebody?
Well, when I talk about connection points, each element has a phasing line that connects the element to the phasing line, which brings the signal all the way to the front of the antenna. And you saw that little black cartridge that snapped in place. And all those elements have to get connected together and sent to that little black box. All those connections are exposed. So at any point in time, one of those connections deteriorates, it throws the entire antenna out of balance. And once that antenna goes out of balance, that,
Well, what kind of a loss do you get when you have any connection points?
well, theoretically, you lose a half a dB for each point.
So 32.
So you can do the math.
You do 16.
You theoretically
Well,
lose
wait a
that
minute.
much.
The DigiTenna does have connection points.
Yeah.
How many does it have?
2.
Two.
2 points.
1 dB versus the other guy?
Yep. We have 1, 2, but they are completely sealed. So no matter what the weather is, if it's wet, sunny, rainy, snowy, windy, this thing never sees that weather. It's completely sealed.
One of the other things that really came out is how sturdy that unit was that we put on that pole versus what we saw out there. The DigiTenna is really built well.
And that's important when you start to install an antenna of that magnitude on a tripod on a roof. What you didn't see was how the effects of a wind, when you get something that long on the roof, how that starts to do the windmill effect. And by just taking that thing and giving it the windmill effect.
Just a little dance you're doing?
Yeah, it's a roof dance. It's the peak of the roof dance. And you do that once in a while when you drop a nut and it rolls down.
I've got some other questions. Whenever you have a 3 dB loss, or you half the signal, if you have a 3 dB gain, you double it. And the bottom line is if you have a cascading series of loss on an antenna, plus losses in the amplifier, plus losses with a splitter, what's happening is in a competitive unit, they are adding up a ton of dB losses that affect the viewing performance. DigiTenna doesn't have that. We got 1 dB in our amplifier. We got a dB in the DigiTenna.
That's it.
That's it. That's all there is. That's amazing. Anything else you want to add? Now, I will say this. If you add a remote over there, then we add an additional 1 dB.
Which is why, Don, it's always best to use the antenna with the embedded amplifier. 1, it's a cost savings. 2, it's time savings. 3, it's the least amount of loss in the system. So if you're in a very deep fringe area where every bit of signal counts, because as Don said earlier, every 3 dB is like doubling your signal or cutting it in half. So the difference between having a picture and not having a picture is sometimes half to 3/4 of a dB. And if you're losing a dB by using a remote amp just with that extra connection, that's the difference between watching the picture or not having anything at all.
You know, I also like that dual method we use with DigiTenna, because the guy that was installing it, our buddy Steve, Steve was really sinking once he saw that he had to put another whole unit on that mast, and or put a rotor on it.
That's only part of the story, Don, because he still, like you said, had to assemble that entire antenna. However, there's more to it, because now he has to make up a wiring harness to connect both antennas before he goes into that amplifier that he had connected. So now you're talking additional connection points, some sort of combiner, the losses of the combiner, the losses of the connection points, complexity of it.
Okay, Uncle, all right. Bottom line is DigiTenna is safer, it's smaller, it's compact, and it performs better. Buy DigiTenna for a quick, cost-effective installation and give your customers the ultimate in HDTV reception.